So on to our final question for the approaches section. This is a 16-mark essay and it's outline and evaluate the psychodynamic approach to explaining human behaviour. So as always, our outline is worth 6 marks and our evaluate is worth 10 marks. So like I always recommend, we should do a little plan first of all to make sure that we know where we're going with our essay. So in terms of knowledge, there's lots we can do for psychodynamic approach, but I've specifically focused in on the tripartite personality, defense mechanisms, and the psychosexual stages. And then for my evaluation, I'm going to use the Little Hands case study to support. I'm going to talk about how the concepts are abstract and lack falsifiability, and of course the approach is deterministic. Try and use issues and debates, as I said earlier, as much as possible. It reduces down the revision that you have to do in the real exams. So I've pre-written this essay like I did in the other essay, so we can have a look at the knowledge first of all. So the psychodynamic approach suggests that human behaviour results from unconscious processes of which we are unaware. In particular, early childhood experiences determine adult behaviour, of which there are 3 parts: the id, the ego, and the superego. Freud called this the tripartite personality. The id is the primitive biological part of the mind and present from birth. It consists of basic biological impulses or drives such as hunger and is known as the pleasure principle. The ego mediates between the id and the superego. It develops around the age of 2 and it tries to reduce conflict between them by using defense mechanisms such as repression or denial, which try to stop us feeling threatened or overwhelmed. It is also known as the reality principle. The superego is our inner parent voice and judges whether actions are right or wrong. It is an internalized representation of the same-sex parent and known as the morality principle. As children develop, they pass through the psychosexual stages: oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital stages. At each stage, there is a conflict the child must resolve in order to progress. If they do not resolve it, then they will become fixated in that stage. They will carry this fixation into adulthood and it be reflected in their behaviours. So that should be enough to get 6 marks on the psychodynamic approach. I've covered the psychosexual stages, a bit on defence mechanisms and the tripartite personality. Now let's have a look at the evaluation that I've written. So in support of the approach, Freud conducted case studies to demonstrate his concepts. For example, Little Hands demonstrated that he displaced his fear of his father castrating him onto horses. However, as only Freud conducted these case studies, they could be open to researcher bias, as he could be looking for evidence for his own theories. It is also hard to generalise from one individual to the general population. Therefore, Freud's method could be said to lack scientific credibility and validity. So I've highlighted the in support because that's my flag to the examiner that I am evaluating, and therefore is my link back to the question. Feel free to highlight these in your exam as well. It might help the examiner see where you're evaluating. Okay, moving on to my second evaluation point then. A weakness of his theories is that they contain abstract concepts. We cannot operationalise or measure concepts such as displacement in a scientific way. But despite this, his work has been used to inform treatments with good success, for example, psychoanalysis. This helps to deal with unresolved conflicts and have influenced the counselling psychology we have today. Therefore, it could be argued that despite his subjective research methods, the approach has good explanatory power. And now for my final evaluation point. However, a final weakness of the approach is that it is deterministic. Freud's theory suggests that our childhood experiences shape our adult personality and does not acknowledge how other factors in adult life can affect abnormality. He ignores the suggestion of free will, and so this is known as psychic determinism. Therefore, the psychodynamic approach could be deemed as limited, and an alternative approach like humanism may be a more effective and holistic way of explaining human behaviour, as it acknowledges both psychodynamic and biological influences. So 3 effective evaluation paragraphs there using key terminology as well.